Welcome back to the Elias Macco Show. Now, every day at this hour, we take a look at something transit-related in our daily in-transit segment. Today, we tackle the auto industry and head to Southern Ontario, where it is such an important industry. Now, Canada's auto industry is at a crossroads. Roaring engines on one side, silent EVs on the other. As tariffs from the U.S. continue to hit the country's automotive parts industry, China says it wants Canada to dive into their EV market and is willing to concede trade tariffs in order to make it happen. Can Canada afford to make such a decision? And what is the current state of its auto industry, particularly compared to those in the U.S., in China, in Europe? Let's find out more. Greg Layson's with us, digital editor at Automotive News Canada. Greg, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me. How's
it feeling in Southern Ontario? How's it feeling in Windsor these days?
I think everyone in the auto industry is in survival mode. You wake up every morning happy to have a job and wonder if you have one tomorrow. I don't think it's doing particularly bad. I don't think it's doing particularly well. I think everyone is just surviving, just maintaining the automotive footprint in Canada, and everyone's on pins and needles waiting to see what is next out of the United States. Just this week, we heard Donald Trump say, yeah, we might be able to work together on auto, and then the very next day, Howard Lutnick appear in Toronto via video saying we are out to destroy your auto industry is essentially the message he brought to Toronto. So which is it? Are we going to work together and get a deal, or is America out to destroy the Canadian automotive industry? But right now, lines are still moving, vehicles are still being assembled, and they're still being shipped to the United States. I would say it's probably status quo with a sense of anxiety and some anxiousness about the auto industry.
And of course, maintaining is better than contracting. But it almost seems like expansion is sort of a pipe dream now and off the table.
I would agree with that. And I think that's been off the table for a really long time. I don't think there was ever going to be an automaker come to Ontario or Quebec and say, we are going to open a brand new assembly plant from the ground up. There are empty factories in Windsor. Part of the Ford engine plant is still vacant and could build more engines, for example. Brampton has an empty assembly factory owned by Stellantis. It's not doing anything. Ford is retooling Oakville. So there's never going to be demand for a new factory. There's always going to be demand for new product in the old factories, but automakers are holding off on making decisions about where to build the next model of anything until Donald Trump comes to some clarity of what it is he's actually trying to achieve through these tariffs. Is it a new USMCA deal that makes automotive more attractive across all three countries? Or is it a deal with just Canada, or does he want to destroy our industry? No automaker is going to commit to a plant or a product until all of that is hashed out. And I suspect we might be in this cycle until the end of probably June, when we get a new USMCA deal, or it's killed altogether.
Now, you may have heard already from over the weekend, the Chinese ambassador to Canada was speaking to Vashi Kapelos from CTV News and said, hey, listen, you want all those tariffs that we've been hitting you with, particularly on the agricultural side, the canola and the like, you want those to go away? Easy. We can do it. We'll make a deal right now. Get rid of the tariffs on Chinese EVs. How is that idea that we could get rid of tariffs on Chinese EVs, how is that being perceived where you are, Greg?
Terrible idea. That is the response from the automotive industry, and here's why. I'll lay out the argument against repealing the EV tariffs on Chinese EVs. If you were to repeal those tariffs, and Chinese EVs were able to flood the market at an incredibly discounted rate, ask yourself, why are they so cheap? They are so cheap because they use cheap labor. All of these companies, for the most part, are backed by Chinese taxpayer dollars. It doesn't matter if they're profitable or not. China is out to flood the market in the EV segment, just as it did for cheap steel, just as it did for solar panels, for a million other things that it floods the global markets with at an undercut value in order to gain market share. The other question is, on top of that, are they reliable and are you confident in the security of a Chinese EV? These are rolling computers with cameras, with LiDAR, with radar, with all kinds of data collection tools within the vehicle. Do you want those rolling around on your Canadian streets, going to your Canadian military facilities if an officer owns one and goes there, just as China banned Teslas from going to their own military installations for a short period of time for that reason, whether it's paranoia or not? There are plenty of reasons to keep EVs out of North America for the time being. And the main one is to allow automakers here and in Europe to catch up to the technology that's been developed in China, to catch up to the supply chains for EVs that have been developed in China. They have about a 10 to 15-year head start on us. It's why they have better battery range. It's why they are better EVs. It's why they're more efficient. But they are also cheap because the government backs them and because they use cheap labor and coal-fired power plants. There are plenty of reasons EVs from China are cheap and plenty of reasons to keep them out. And I understand the trade war. We saw it firsthand. When Trump installed tariffs on auto, what did we do? We targeted, the GOP states. So we targeted whiskey from Kentucky. We targeted oranges from Florida. And so China is doing the exact same thing that we did. They're targeting our canola industry as retaliation.
Now, Greg, we're with Greg Layson, digital editor at Automotive News Canada. How are we doing at catching up? We need time to catch up. So how are we doing? I know in this province of Quebec, a lot of emphasis was put, we're going to become the battery maker. We've got the minerals. We're going to work on that. Federal government and provincial governments have thrown money at trying to get the components that goes in EVs to have them made in Canada. So how are we doing on catching up?
Not well. We are slow in this race. We started well behind. China had a head start. Look, here's where I believe, and this is an opinion now, that the government fell down or fell short. The government was hell-bent on forcing everyone to buy EVs without first establishing a supply chain to make EVs in North America. Even when these mandates came in 2023 and the incentives came in 2023, everything was really owned and controlled by China. And when I say everything, I mean the minerals. And we've seen this over the last little while between the United States and China. China putting export limits on some minerals and, the U.S. wanting our minerals. Where the money should have been spent first is getting all of the minerals out of the ground and establishing a supply chain so that factories in Ontario and in the Midwestern United States could build electric vehicles more cheaply instead of importing parts and minerals from overseas, which up the cost. Allow the supply chain to develop. Look, we have a 100-plus-year-old supply chain for internal combustion engine vehicles in North America. It's why they can be made cheaply in Mexico and in Canada and at a reasonable price in America. We don't have that for electric vehicles. And really where the emphasis should have been early was on the beginning of the supply chain, not the end. And so now we're trying to play catch up.
In the minute we have left here, Greg, with you, on the front of, how we have to deal with both the United States, our largest trading partner, and China, our second largest trading partner, should that be the case Canada is making to U.S. officials? Like, hey, at the end of the day, Chinese EVs, they're coming. The world is changing. The auto industry is going to change come hell or high water. Should we be focusing on building that future together?
Look, the term that's been thrown around is Fortress North America when it comes to automotive. And what the ideal situation is for automakers is that the United States, Canada, and Mexico work together. Mexico had started to allow Chinese EVs into its marketplace, and China had planned on building a factory there. But through the pressure of the United States, sort of walk that back. All three countries need to be in this together to protect the North American auto industry, not just the American one, not just the Canadian one, and not just the Mexican one. All three together. It's going to be a showdown, but they have to work together. And then once we catch up, let the free market reign.
Greg, thanks for chatting with us on this holiday Thanksgiving Monday. Appreciate your time.
Anytime.
Greg Layson is digital editor at Automotive News Canada.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This
is bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.